The meeting of the Planning Commission, this is the April 2nd, 2020 meeting at 6 o'clock. And the chair and vice chair are both absent, so as Secretary of the Planning Commission, I am going to start the meeting with a roll call. Ask everybody to turn their microphones on. And please, Margaret, start with Margaret. Please just state your name.
Margaret Rayner, present.
Terry Gottlieb.
Commissioner Butler.
Wayne Brew, present. Scolari, present.
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
And Gottlieb moves and Rayner supports. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Are there any comments or corrections to the minutes of March 19th? Seeing none, we approve the minutes by consent. And any conflict of interest or case on the agenda? Stated. And so the next thing is we need a chair to continue the meeting. So would anybody like to nominate a acting chair for the meeting?
I move that Commissioner Lori be acting chair for this meeting.
Okay, and a second?
Awesome.
Okay. Moved by Gottlieb, second by Better. All in favor, say aye.
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 Right, Steve.
Okay. I last did this about 9 or 10 years ago, so.
Like right
I'm gonna be a little rusty. Our first item of business this evening is public hearing on the rezoning of 600 Spring Street, 02 RDZ 0424. And I'll ask staff to make the introduction.
The Planning Commission is being asked to make a recommendation to the City Commission regarding a request to rezone the property located at 600 West Spring Street, which is currently zoned municipal, to be zoned medium-density residential. The City Commission approved a resolution of intent to sell this property at their December 12, 2022 regular meeting for residential units. Following this meeting, the City Manager opened negotiations with Habitat for Humanity, and approved a right of entry permit to allow access to the property to conduct an environmental review. Upon completion of the review with minimal findings and an appraisal, the city manager has negotiated a purchase price. Attached to the agenda was the staff report. You can show them on screen, which shows the existing zoning regulations and the proposed zoning regulations. And then the land development code rezoning items for consideration. We did not receive any correspondence. On screen is the application. The area map. The parcel is outlined in blue. And the block map. Again, the parcel is outlined in blue. The zoning map, as you can see, it's municipal zoning surrounded by planned unit development to the north and west, and to the south, medium density residential, and then to the east, multiple family residential. Existing photos on the site. And proof of the minor journal ad. Then an excerpt from our future land use map. Calling out for this land use to be civic because it currently is owned by the city of Marquette, and that was future land use. We assumed it would still be owned by the city of Marquette. And then municipal for the proposed zoning map, again, because it's owned by the city of Marquette. Then other rezoning items for the planning commission to consider. And then spot zoning information. planning commission have any questions?
Seeing none, I'll ask if there's a representative from Habitat. Would you like to approach the microphone there and make any comments regarding your application?
My name is Deanna Johnson. I'm the executive director at Habitat. I would just add that we hope to get your support tonight.
Thank you. At this point, then I will open the public hearing, and anyone from the public wishing to address this issue can approach the microphone. Please give us your name and address and comments up to 3 minutes. Thank you. David? Seeing no one, close the public hearing. I'll open it for commissioners who have any questions on this issue. Comments? Yes.
This is rezoned for medium density residential and the six hills that filter. Does it go back to being municipal or does it stay changed?
It would stay changed, we would have to rezone it back to municipal.
Would there be a possibility of the zoning change independent on the sale of the property?
Well, the planning commission can put conditions on any approval that they're not going to give to an item, so that could be a condition.
About conditional zoning though, it's basically.
No, that's a different thing. That's where you would approve certain land use. There's usually a land use approval associated with that, that will allow for certain uses that might be appropriate for that area and take certain uses out of the permitted column of uses, and then maybe make all the special land uses unavailable property. So you can do that, I think, the conditional rezoning. This is just a normal condition of approval contingent on sale of the property being completed.
Okay, and then we'll remind commissioners, we are not rezoning the property, we're making the recommendation to the city commission. Commissioner Gottlieb.
Has the city commission already, or the city already entered negotiations? And is a purchase agreement been signed?
Well, per the statement that we received from the manager's office that I read out before, that the city manager opened negotiations. So yes, they've entered it. I don't know what purchase agreement.
Yes.
We do have a purchase agreement signed, and the purchase is, the final thing that the purchase agreement is contingent on is the zoning change. So I'm not sure that if you conditioned it back, I don't know what that would do.
That's on the stated in the agenda.
That's, this is separate from this procedure, but I'm not sure why, if your motion was to approve the rezoning contingent on the sale, why that would conflict at all with the agreement that Habitat has.
Anyone else?
But say I went by the property and looked at it, and in my mind, this is good use of the property for Habitat, for community to build houses. I think this is actually a large step, not a large step, but a step forward for the city in terms of affordable housing. I see no reason why we shouldn't.
I'll make a comment also. Well, the city originally looked to this site as a primary site for a consolidated fire station. That was when it was a much larger parcel. Parcel was moved away, I guess, when the hospital purchased the property from the city. transferred to the hospital. And then later, that PUD amended to allow for Beacon House to be constructed on what was primarily the footprint for the proposed fire station. So what is left, I guess, there does not really provide an adequate site for that future municipal use. And I don't believe the city had an additional or alternate municipal use for this property. So I agree with Commissioner Gottlieb that the use of it for affordable housing was an excellent improvement to the property, and in my mind, it does agree with the goals of the master plan, the current master plan. We're trying to create more affordable housing, especially in that portion of the city. So I guess I open it up to motion for commissioners.
One thing.
Yes.
Sure. I think you guys probably should go through the spot zoning part of this.
Okay.
To confirm that.
This would be the PowerPoint portion or the
Yeah,
conditions?
there's
Okay.
item in there, right there, also three conditions that would have to be met. Spot zone will meet each of those characteristics, small size, inconsistent use. Basically have to determine it's not a spot zone, or it's to be fully within the not the state law.
Okay, considering it says question one is basically, is this an appropriate location for the proposed zoning? Proposed zoning being medium density residential. Is there anyone who has a comment on that? Because it's not. It's directly across the street from section of medium density residential. So it seems that it is appropriate. Would the rezoning be consistent with other zones and land uses in the area? Consensus in those things. Yes?
Yes.
Is the proposed rezoning consistent with the trend of development in that area? Or indicated that development is not what was envisioned a few years ago, and has changed with the size of the parcels. So what is residential? It's going to be consistent. Are the uses in the proposed zone equally or better suited to the area than current uses? Current uses, just vacant land, it's receiving minimal maintenance. I would say definitely. Is the proposed rezoning consistent with both the policies and uses proposed for that area in the master plan? Well, it isn't quite consistent with the future land use map, but we have some consensus that it is consistent with the policies that are out there. And I'm seeing consensus from all others. Question two.
Actually, Steve, the spot zoning characteristics were these, single parcel zone for uses that are quite dissimilar from the land zoning, the lands around it. Small in area, typically grants a right to use land that's not enjoyed by similarly situated adjacent parcels. And then we talked about it inconsistent with the land use plan, policies of the master plan. Those
only one that maybe seems to apply, the spot zoning criteria is typically a small area. This is slightly less than 1 acre. But it is consistent with the neighborhood. And neighbors are enjoying the same rights to develop residential use on their properties. So anyone feels that there's any other characteristic of spot zoning that we are in danger of overlooking? That being the case, I think we're ready for a motion. Commissioner Godwin.
I'd like to make a motion, please.
Go ahead.
After conducting a public hearing, review of the application and staff report for 02-REC-04-24, the planning commission finds that the proposed rezoning is inconsistent with the future land use map, but consistent with recommendations for land use of Chapter 3 of the Community Master Plan and meets the requirements of the Land Development Code Section 54.1405, and hereby recommends that the City Commission approve 02-REC-04-24 as presented, with the condition that this be conditional on the sale of property to Habitat for Humanity by the city.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion? Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Feder. Any further discussion of the motion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. At this point, we will move on to item 2 on the agenda, citizens wishing to address the commission on agenda items. In addition to the item we've just completed, we will be reviewing some future changes to the land development code. We are studying and hopefully recommending to the commission in about a month. What are the comments on those? Well, we'll move on. We have no old business tonight, no other new business. Next item on the agenda is citizens wishing to address the commission on non-agenda items. Commissioner Davis, please.
Sally Davis, 1711 Grandview Drive. I've been on the city commission for 4.5 years, and could have been phone call, which is and when I was fortunate enough to be elected mayor, one of the things I said I was going to do is make sure that I got to at least one of the meetings of the various commissions. And so I'm here just to say hello and to thank you for your time. I know that this committee in particular has to study more, has to have a high level of knowledge than all the others. And so I so appreciate that. And I was very pleased that this current year we were able to actually get you paid. Not a lot, but a little bit. During the 4.5 years I've been on the commission, occasionally I hear from other committees that the commission doesn't listen to them or doesn't get to hear them. And I just want you to know that we read all of your minutes, yours are more intense and more interesting than the other minutes. But we do read the other minutes, but still sometimes that information doesn't get passed along. I think this commission is the exception to that because you're much more formal and your recommendations to the city commission are always there versus some of what happens with the other commissions, other committees. But again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest in the city and just wanted to say hi.
Thank you for coming and thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Any other citizens? Seeing none, we will move on to correspondence, reports, and minutes of other boards and committees. Any other agenda for that? And then we have training. We have no training items in the packet tonight. So we are at the point where we will start considering the land development code amendments for this current year. I'll turn it over to other use cases.
Yeah, I'll start off with this in the definition section here. I think we talked last time, our last meeting, about the most of these definitions. But I'm sorry we don't have this separated out on what we talked about before versus what we talked about, or what we're going to talk about tonight. But if anybody has any questions on any of them, let's bring those questions up. I do believe we talked about, I know the agriculture definition is one that we added the last, I think we talked about this at the last meeting, and we'll probably talk about it again because there's probably some more to talk about in terms of what we're proposing there with the indoor agriculture, totally enclosed, being considered different than agriculture being considered manufacturing. And that is my segue to talk about the manufacturing definitions, because these aren't new. These are things that I've, additions that I wanted to, I'm hoping we can come to some kind of consensus, because for quite a while we've been struggling with the definitions for particular light manufacturing. We didn't have a definition for light manufacturing when I first started working here 13 plus years ago, and then we got a new brewery downtown, and definitely was something that falls into category of light manufacturing in those cities, so we had to come up with a definition for what that means. And this is a particularly difficult thing to define in a way that's black and white, because there's so many potential variables in what happens in places that manufacture stuff. It's everything from, people making jewelry at a home occupation or in their shed or whatever to, sawmills. And so one of the things I came upon recently in another ordinance from a different city is this artisan manufacturing. And I thought this was helpful because it does help us kind of differentiate those things that are on the less intense scale of manufacturing, which is one of the things that that's where I think the struggle's mostly been, is what do we call these things that are really kind of on the light side of manufacturing? The heavier side, it's a little easier to kind of suss out what's heavy manufacturing. And we've got that defined at the end of, I think in the light manufacturing definition, it says it's normally absent from light manufacturing any types of heavy machinery, welding, cranes. I wanted to add a couple other things in there. But back to the artisan part, there's a lot of people in any town that are doing kind of artisan manufacturing, right? They're making jewelry, woodworking, they've got a little cabinet shop or their basement or a shed where they're making small furniture, small scale production furniture, or just craft work. So I thought that would be helpful. And in the terms of food, also, this was, I think, already in the definition for light manufacturing, was this reference to the cottage food law. So there are some things we can use to help us kind of differentiate and go to the definition for light manufacturing. You see that if we add something that says light manufacturing is most often associated with batches or discrete production runs that require multiple workers to produce. That helps too. Somebody who's just has a home-based business is probably not making enough money to hire workers at home. So if you have multiple workers, you're probably more in the category of light manufacturing. And that you're making enough money in sales revenue that you can support a business, and that might be a brick and mortar store, or that might just be a home-based business, but it's a source of revenue, it's a source of income that can support somebody. So those are some kind of things that I thought would be helpful. And then on the side of trying to differentiate heavy manufacturing, as I was going through what these things that do differentiate and that are heavy manufacturing, like heavy machinery, welding operation, cranes, to add large farm implements because agriculture is something that is generally a heavier industry kind of a thing. And then we had in here or hazardous materials. So everything underlined and highlighted is proposed new language. It became apparent to me reading some other guidance on this that just saying hazardous materials isn't adequate because pretty much every home has hazardous materials. So the National Fire Protection Association codes are a lot more specific about what is considered hazardous material as far as businesses go. So I wanted to add some little specificity to that, so we can say, okay, if you're using these things that are defined by the NFPA, and you'll find on a material safety data sheet that the fire department would have access to, and they, inspect a business for hazardous material types or whatever. That's going to help us determine whether or not it's that kind of a business. So, and then just kind of, again, the process of refining these definitions, it kind of, some of these are ongoing as the whole code is, trying to refine it, make it better. So there's some other changes in there, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Commissioners? Mr. Godwin?
Dave, my thought is that some manufacturing actually transitions to the life of a company. Black Rocks is a great example. They started off very small, but multiple buildings. They've gone from what was probably initially an artisan into a light manufacturing. I assume they would still be considered light manufacturing now.
Yeah.
Even though they're using big equipment.
Yeah.
Is that something that would have to go into the zoning? Like, okay, you can do artisan manufacturing in this area, but you can't do light manufacturing?
Well, the way it works is light manufacturing is in the use table as something that's either permitted or special use, depending on the zoning district. We're going to more or less use the artisan manufacturing as a check to say, that doesn't meet the standard of light manufacturing. If we can define it, we believe we can make an administrative decision that somebody's business is an artisan or their hobby, whatever, that, somebody might be concerned that that's a business. We can differentiate it and make a decision on that. The light manufacturing still applies, it always has, or since we had a definition for it, and put it in the code as land use, to either be a permitted or special use.
What happens if you transition from, you start off as a vacuum, I don't know what you started off.
Light manufacturing, she actually has welding equipment,
Okay, that's a bad example. What if I started off as a home brewer?
but she probably did start with just hand tools.
Can that, we wouldn't force her out of her home or out of that.
At some point, you might have to go.
Because you're doing a use change, just like anyone else would.
So it would be considered a use change and actually.
You'd have to meet the codes for building codes, the state codes for that use change, and then for our codes as well.
And the last time we updated the code last year, we added a lot more specificity to the home occupations part of the code. Because we do run into this with people that are doing work out of their home. And one particular area we have trouble with is the home based car repair. You know, that can quickly get out of hand into somebody who's now got all kinds of solvents and stuff that they really shouldn't be using on residential property neighborhood because they've gone from, you know, just being a Shade Tree mechanic once in a while on the weekend working on somebody's car to now they've got 5 cars parked in the yard and it's a business. And that's not something that's a home occupation.
We have that house that's going to be a home/bakery. Would you consider that artisan since he's making bread?
No.
Would you consider that,
Yeah,
how would that fall in here?
well, in the definition here, you know, that's, I think that's much more clearly a light manufacturing because of the amount of materials used. And that it's also going to have several workers, or likely more than one worker. It's going to be the food is a tricky one, but with businesses that produce enough food that they package it and sell it off site, that's one of the criteria that we've kind of used to help us with those kind of businesses, like the co-op's kitchen. They don't just make food that they sell on site. They package food, they sell it off site. They do a lot of sales in that in terms of producing food for sale outside of the store. So that really gets more into the light manufacturing side.
Even though they're going to live there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand he's got a commercial oven. It's not going to be just a small cottage type of thing where he's taking it to the farmer's market alone.
But I think the mixed use zoning that we approved for that allows for both residential and commercial.
Yeah.
I had one comment on the hazardous materials, and this one I'm a little lazy on because it's been too long since I was dealing with them, but I believe there's a provision called Sarah Title 3 that requires reporting to the fire departments and to a county emergency planning committee for various types of hazardous materials depending upon the quantity that you have on site. And I think it probably parallels MFPA, but it's quite specific as to you need a plan for how to store and deal with them, and also need to report them so that the county, other emergency responders are aware of what you have on the property. I think that would be a good reference for that provision. Yeah. I think probably the fire chief can help you fill the details. Anything else on manufacturing? If you don't mind, Dave, I'd like to go back to a couple of the other ones above that. Just a couple of comments and things I noticed in there. Alteration, maybe went a little too far with the definition we got there. I can see where adding or eliminating or significantly changing the size of doors or windows might want to require an administrative review and a permit. But if you're just replacing existing windows or doors with something more energy efficient, not the same nominal size.
So that wouldn't be a change in the structural member, because they wouldn't be cutting them bigger.
No, this is an or, I think, if I read it correctly. Listed.
So we say any change in structural members of a such as walls, partitions, columns, beams, girders, semicolon, indoors or windows. You're right, that maybe it's a little refined.
Say it a little different.
And you might want to leave it at that for floor-based cold areas, but I don't think the average homeowner.
Yeah, that wasn't the intent, I mean, to
Yeah, I think
require,
that's-
require that an alteration or a change of the same size. It would just be a structural change in the window.
Okay. And then, building frontage, again, I don't know if that's intended to just apply to, commercial, industrial, and institutional, or if it's single-family homes, I mean, the way it's written right now, when you park in your driveway, the building frontage is along your driveway. Might just need a little clarification to make it clear that it's not intended.
What would be the downside of it being applied to residential?
That, I wasn't sure how you are using the term building frontage in administrative.
So it's in the signage portion, is that,
Yeah, and I'm not sure everywhere where it would appear in the code, but I think it's mostly just applying to commercial with signage and with screening.
because it says, where pedestrian walk, where customer access to the building is available. So in the signage portion of the code, dealing with how many, frontages somebody has, that's the definition that we would use. So, it's in the signage portion. Were you wanting, you're putting it here, Dave, just to make it easier to find it here in the main definition part?
Yeah.
Question.
Yes, Commissioner Reagan.
So what would somebody, as a homeowner that wants to put in, say, a slightly larger window than the sizes there, what would they have to do then to meet the city requirement?
Zoning compliance permit, and then for the county a building permit.
Okay.
And then for us, sometimes,
Because it might be 3 or 4 inches, I'm saying.
So, but
if they're changing the header, that's when we're getting, if they're cutting it and the header doesn't have to change, so if it's changing the length this way, normally the county doesn't require a permit, it's just not changing the header, it's not a real structural alteration, but if they're making it this way, a lot goes into that with the county. And then for us, we're also verifying they're not, doing any interior modeling and things like that.
and keep in mind, if they need a building permit, they need a zoning permit. So county doesn't issue building permits, but getting zoning permits, so, yeah, the alteration is just one category of, items that you could check off when you're getting zoning. Is it an alteration, is it an addition, is it interior remodeling? That kind of thing, so. For the real reason that, the real thing that triggered putting the definition in there is this moving the building or structure part of this. Because we didn't have anything in our code that really covered what is moving a building considered. And we needed to have something to back up how are we regulating the moving of a building? And this came up with the NTN's new project over for the trailhead, where they got the site plan approved just a few months ago. And then a couple months later, they came and said, well, we need to move the location of the restroom. Well, how's that gonna be reviewed? We said, well, where's it gonna go? Well, we're not sure, but we're thinking we'll put it over here. Well, who has the authority? Does it have to go back to the planning commission, or can staff administratively approve it? When we look at our chart, figure 51, that says, who approves what, where does it come under? Is it a major site plan, minor site plan review, is it an administrative review, is it a zoning permit? There's nothing really clearly on there about moving a building, and moving a building could involve moving utilities on the site if it has utilities hooked up. In this case, it doesn't have utilities. So we scheme, defining the thing as an alteration. And then in that use table, we put in those new definitions of when you're moving a building, if it has utilities or doesn't have utilities. If it has utilities, it's gonna be administrative site plan review. If it doesn't, then staff review and change. But it was nowhere in there was it defined as what a moving a building was considered under all these different categories of possible reasons for getting it.
And again, I don't know if you want to include everything in, I moved residential storage sheds, and you just moved his last fall. If they're under 100 square feet or something, or 120, I think it's with the code. Size to 20. Well, do you want to try to capture those, or just?
Well, with residential,
You gotta make sure they still meet our code requirements.
yeah,
As far as setbacks, yeah.
we would want to know that for residential, but the primary reason for this is the commercial, because that's triggered, initially there's site plan review involved.
And a special land use, so they have to pay the over $2,000 fee to come back, do a public hearing.
It required
If
administrative.
Right now,
review.
it's required, special land use doesn't give us a lot of authority as staff. to do.
That's why I'm wondering if, if it's a $2,000 fee, somebody's probably gonna move a shed.
Well,
That's residential, we're not talking about, we're talking about.
So it should be,
talking about commercial building utilities, you're changing
put a
second.
clause in there that says,
It's already in the, I think it was probably last week, is that when we showed them the location stuff?
Yeah.
That's all in the
Figure 51.
site plan review,
Article 14.
and single family and two family are exempt.
thank you. Again, I guess the next one I had here was business. I'm wondering if there should be an exemption, or maybe it's covered the same way that you just explained, but exemption for storage of personal property in a building that's property of the building owner or lessee. Right now, got a garage or storage building, seems to be covered by this as a business. That definition is in here. So legal use other than a residence. Any other uses?
So you're saying that on a single family home, they would have a garage that they would lease out?
Well, maybe the whole property is leased out as an included. But I'm just saying that if there's a detached building, whether it be a garage, a storage shed, or whatever, it's not used for a residence or any of these other uses here. It's just used for storage. As I'm reading this definition, this says it's a business. It's not a building. So it just might need another phrase in there or something. This is the full list of definitions that applies across the board. Under canopy, it does, this definition requires rigid support posts to be, to meet the definition of a canopy. But there are numerous canopies around town that are just cantilevered off the building without the support posts. Matter of fact, Denmark actually wanted to put support posts in their canopy, and city denied them that. Planning commission for years ago. Those encroachments. Right?
Well, we need a way to differentiate canopy from awning.
And some awnings actually have rigid colors as well. Just
How
Well,
does that negotiate all the
It would be a
feet?
canopy. By definition. In most cases, it's not really gonna be, something that is gonna make or break the proposal, whether it's, we can't, it doesn't absolutely meet every part of the definition. It's just that we have for awnings, we have a standard for how low they can be. I don't really know that there's canopies, we have canopies, the main thing, regular canopies for signs. Signs on the canopy.
In awnings, we only regulate how low they are if there's a sign on the awning or if it's in farm based. If it's residential.
Well, that was something that was going to follow from this, is we have a standard for awning height in that sign section, but it needs to be applied across the board in the commercial zoning districts.
And it probably should be the same standard for Marquette piece.
Yeah.
But there's been a number of issues that have come before the planning commission. We're going on back to the Adams Hotel. Which we, Masonic, one of the theater, or they were all the issues and problems before we decide. Just want to make sure a couple of pieces with
Right.
Commissioner Reed has a question.
How does that relate to these tent car enclosures? It's canopy.
A carport.
No, not a carport. I'm talking, they're almost like a tent, but they're put cars under in the winter time.
Yeah. Well, we do have a carport definition.
That's considered a carport even though it's a,
The ones that are like a hoop house.
yeah, like a roof house.
We do have a structure definition which defines those tent-like structures also.
So we don't have to worry about that meeting as canopy.
Yeah, correct. It can fall under the structure. And those require a permit because they're structures that have enforcement on the ground.
Your development. I guess, you know, we need to make sure that we're excluding re-siding or painting, re-roofing, private dwelling, or remodeling a kitchen or bath. It just seems a little bit too all-inclusive.
Well, as far as permit requirements, we have that stuff sussed out in Article 14, where we talk about what requires permits and what doesn't. Really,
It's hard to determine that one.
Yeah.
When you're just looking at it.
Yeah. I mean,
Everything out of context.
but that 14 where it talks about what requires zoning compliance permit, basically goes through a short list, and it's structural members that says, you know, replace, permits to replace the treads, the, individual boards, the balusters, stuff like that, siding, roofing. Yeah, it's a pretty broad definition, but I don't know that anything on there is accurate. It just doesn't exclude things, but in our permit section, we do differentiate what does and does not.
Okay. Really moved on to the solar energy systems.
No, but I do want to call out the fact that we're, and they get into Article 3, we're defining duplex, triplex, and quadruplex here. because, and here's the big thing, we're proposing in Article 3 to consider allowing, for, you see, we've changed added to the dwelling multiple family to state 5+ dwelling units. And then find triplex and quadplex, added triplex and quadplex to the list of, under the residential uses. Duplex is already in the list, 2-family duplex. But we're proposing to allow duplex dwelling units as a permitted use in the low-density residential and medium-density residential districts with the asterisk there. Meaning, and it's defined on the next page in the duplex dwelling corner lots only, lots with 2 frontages that are not parallel or on a through lot. Okay, and then one column, that's the permitted principal uses. And then in the other column for special land uses, it's the duplexes other than corner lots with 2 non-parallel frontages. And quadplexes and triplexes are in the special land use category. So what we're proposing here is duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes being special land use in low density residential, being a permitted use in the MDR if they meet that standard for being on a corner lot. This is just a first run at this. We're also saying that triplexes and quadplexes will be permitted uses in the multiple family residential mixed use central business district. Just to clarify those, I'm pretty sure those are already, I don't know exactly in the central business district exactly. Yeah, well, they're on their check. As they are in MFR, but we didn't have this category there for triplexes. So a little confusing here, but the main thing is allowing duplexes as a use by right if it meets that corner standard in both the MDR and the LDR zones.
Mr. Goff?
You know, I struggled with that when I was reading this, doing my homework. And I really didn't understand why, the reasoning. I think I understand why you would do that in an LDR, have duplexes on the corner only, with the other being special land use. But I didn't understand that so much in the MDR. Why are duplexes corner lots only, but then allow quads and tries without a similar qualification, or would it, I guess in my mind, it would make sense just not to have that qualification for the duplexes. Why does a duplex have to be on a corner lot in an MDR, but a private quad?
Permitted, it states it's permitted, and then if it's not on a corner lot, then it's a special land use.
Right, and I don't understand why.
It's just one option. It wouldn't have to.
I guess
And
it doesn't make sense to me to have the duplex as a special land, under special land use in an MDR. I just don't understand why it's on both sides of the line.
yeah, and you know, I didn't get, I don't think I got through this with a clear enough picture of what I was proposing myself, but I started with this concept of the duplexes only being allowed on these non-criminal streets in the low-density residential district. Because I think there's gonna be a lot of pushback, if you allow them everywhere. But in the medium-density residential, I do think that that would be less important. That, you know.
I agree with you 100% on that. I just don't think, I guess maybe what I'm saying, I suggest maybe the, under the special land uses for the MDR, delete the dwelling, two-family duplex. Or change the wording in the permitted use to just say dwelling duplex.
For the MDR.
I don't understand why a duplex is okay in the corner, but a quad and tri is okay.
Right, well, the way I had this, I was thinking, you know, with the almost certain pushback that's gonna come with proposing duplexes and triplexes as permitted use in the MDR, medium density, or the low density residential districts. There may be some concessions, and that corner lot option has worked really well in one particular city where it has been implemented. And then in the MDR, you know, you could propose, I mean, we could float the permitted use with no restrictions and see if it's going to fly or not, and then come back to some kind of option like only corner lots with two frontages.
And I see what he's talking about, in the MDR, we're showing it as quadplex and triplex as a permitted use.
Yeah.
So if then why are we showing it over here as duplex as a special?
Right. Part of it is, I didn't get done.
I'm relying on your expertise here because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right, so maybe say, I don't know, great catch, Jared.
Yeah, honestly, it's one of those things I think I meant to get back and do more work in, and I think that.
So are you saying that you're okay with the triplexes and quads being permitted use in that MDR?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I just would also just have dwelling duplex without any qualifications there as well. But I think the MDR, given what we're experiencing in this environment, yeah, I have no problem with duplexes, lots, cars.
Commissioner Lee?
What is the alternative if it's all single family houses and they don't want to duplex? We just said they have to then?
Permitted use means if you meet all the requirements, staff can approve a certain point.
Because I can see single family people worried that it would diminish the value of their property. If you put like a quad or whatever in there.
Right. That is one of the reasons that we moved that.
Yeah, I mean, at the national level, they're trying to destroy residential neighborhoods in the state, in the city. So they're trying to do away with residential neighborhoods. Period. That is the trend in the country. The other thing I would like to say is, I think there's a point at which you can't write enough rules and regulations to cover every incident that might come up once in a lifetime. Once in a while, we should be able to say, let me see. Yeah, that should work. And let it go with that. I don't know. I don't think you can cover yourself to the point where anything you do, you can say, right there. I mean, sometimes we have to make decisions based on what we know. We don't know it all. No one does. We make mistakes once in a while. I just can't see it all in writing. Dot. The other thing that, wanted to bring up also was when we're talking about all these different things, triplexes, duplexes, in residential neighborhoods, we have to get back to the fact that we gotta get rid of that green space stuff. Because, you know, you're probably gonna want the parking in the back. And we've got limited amounts of land we can use because of our green space requirement. It's just ties you up, but you can only do so much.
Well, that's gonna go hand in hand with the, what we just talked about the last meeting, the eliminating mandatory building separation, multifamily districts. We haven't gotten to that part of the code yet, but that's going hand in hand with that.
The other thing, I don't know if you guys can do it, but can you pull up the front page of our building code on your iPads? Front page of our building codes, unless it was misprinted, was what I think is kind of a big error. We're still referring to the DEQ, which no longer exists. So, I mean, we're gonna be so factual that everything point by point by point. We should at least cover that.
Told the county building code to,
Marquette County was our own. Yes. Front page refers to DEQ, which no longer exists.
Well, the issue was what did exist when they approved the loan for, or the grant for the development of the LDC. So it's not incorrect to say that it was the DEQ that approved the grant. That's what it says. It was approved.
You can refer people to an organization that no longer exists.
It just says they funded the development of the LDC.
Okay. Very confusing.
So we'll bring this back to duplex, triplex, quadplex thing. Again, after we finesse this next section, over these two sections, but that definitely was one of the reasons I left that in there, even though it wasn't, completely, a proposal completely thought through, to get some discussion. Because there is gonna be, maybe not so much at the planning commission level, but at the next level, and this is, the reality is that if it gets approved, then the building can commence, people can commence using, buildings in the or in the medium density or low density residential districts for duplexes, quadplexes, and triplexes as they're used by right. Then there are going to be there's going to be a lot of community discussion about it, a lot of NIMBYism.
I think most of us were on the planning commission when the gentleman that had a permit to, or he was here before the planning commission to renew his variance or special use permit to build a duplex on Primrose Peak, #2 lot. And yes, we had a lot of opposition from the neighbors just for something he hadn't built yet, but wanted to renew a permit that he already had.
Yeah.
Under these provisions, he won't even need to renew that anymore.
Right.
Right, he could build there, right, especially since it was a corner lot, it wouldn't make any difference which way we recommend this. But I agree that at least the duplexes should be permitted in both the low density and medium density by permit, right? Because that's just returning to what was historically the development of Marquette, it's the beginning. I think most blocks had a duplex in them, if not more. And I think it was a good way to have increased density without having big apartment buildings. So forward to that change, and yes, I understand that when it gets to the city commission's level, they're gonna have a lot of opposition, if that's what we recommend to them. I really think that people need to consider the alternatives, and certainly family style duplexes in neighborhoods should be preferable to expanding large apartment complexes. We'll move on to your next.
Yeah, so just stay on this, page, under that section for permitted and medium density residential district where we have the central business district here with adding a maximum front yard setback of 5 feet in the central business district, which would mean this is more or less a form-based kind of standard. We're saying that a new building must be located within the 5 feet of the property line. That's a recommendation in our draft master plan, and in my opinion, it's a really good one because it will see less of the kind of suburban type of building development. Hopefully, we won't see anything like that again downtown, like where the Little Caesars pizza places, corner of Fourth and Washington. The building is set back 20-something feet from the curb. It's got a parking lot in front. Well, that's kind of a suburban style building in the urban area, and it's not a place. It's a recommendation for a more urbanist kind of development is parking in the back, buildings up front. Buildings up front, it's more pedestrian friendly, it's more urban, it's more historically urban, like our old buildings downtown are all built to the sideline. Makes it more inviting pedestrian environment.
Mr. Rain?
What's happening there? They're working on that building as we speak.
Yeah, so somebody bought it and franchise, franchise.
So they're just updating the outside of it.
They're gonna reopen it, they're rebasing the building. They're gonna reopen it soon.
It's Little Caesars again.
We tried to talk them out of into taking the sign down in front.
I was going to comment on that.
Yes.
I was allowed to comment on the sign.
Yeah, they wanted to put up a whole bunch more signs on the building, and we told them, if you go to the BCA and offer them, that maybe if you take the sign down in front, maybe they'll give you what's going on in the building. They said, no, appropriate. You gotta have the sign, the whole sign's gotta stay there. So, the eyesore stays there.
Gas station.
Right.
Something like that.
Also, it's had multiple histories.
Quite some time ago.
So going back to the 5 feet front yard setback.
I have some concerns with it. For one thing, I think the whole idea of building a street wall on both sides of the street has a very negative effect in that it creates a wind tunnel that is very unpleasant for pedestrians to walk through. And the more you can stagger the face of the buildings, the more you can break up that wind speed and make it a little more pleasing. And I think buildings such as the theaters, and there were a couple other stores downtown that had maybe the upper stories might have been built out to the property line, but they had an inset entryway that allowed for some shelter, whether it be from the rain or from the wind or whatever. Made things a lot more pleasing for pedestrians downtown. I think we really should be allowing that, if not encouraging it. That doesn't mean I want to see parking in front of any buildings down there either. well, even, I think even the old Remington building that's law offices down there right now sits at least 5 feet back from the property line, doesn't it? Next to the pocket park. Again, it's just a straight wall base, but it just provides enough break in the long canyon thing to provide some relief for pedestrians.
So you're saying something like to see it maybe further back, like 10 feet or something?
Well, so maybe you want to indicate that upper stories or something have to be out there, but I would say first floor, 10 feet is more appropriate. That doesn't mean people are gonna feel that they can give up that floor space, in a retail establishment to provide some different type of entryway, but it also would accommodate those that, when they're reusing a building down there to fit their access ramps inside the footprint of the building instead of trying to get a license from the city to occupy the right of way with an access ramp.
So the, maybe a range for the maximum setback? Off of that? That's sufficient.
Just think we have to consider more than just the idea of creating a street wall. It has some benefits, like you said, in eliminating parking out front, but maybe a building wants to have a little bit of landscaping at their front door.
I think about the museum as a good example, because it's set back from the other buildings that are on that kind of like park and some,
Yeah,
design
that was-
structures.
That was a grocery store originally, was
But I mean, that's the only building I think of that has a setback like that.
the law office is on Spring Street, is one that's set back more than 5 feet. Has a lawn. There we go.
Yes. So a coping effect is nice. Anything's gonna be arranged between 0, which you could build right up to the property, and whatever side, if it's 10 feet or 8 feet or 12 feet. There's gonna be that range that you can build in the front of the building. But the main point is to eliminate the option for parking in front of the building. Right off the street.
Maybe because we stated differently then. I agree, we don't want parking in front of those buildings though.
Probably 8 to 10 feet, I think, is a good.
All 10, and the maximum setback.
Because there's a lot of incentive for the property owner to minimize it anyway.
Yeah.
As long as they can't use it for parking or
Right.
something like that. Yes.
Is it possible to do this one, see if there's any references from other locations that have?
Well, there's all kinds of references, and we have none right now, we have no standard. The reference in the we have Third Street corridor, which has a 5-foot setback. And we have 2 sub-districts there. And then we have the downtown waterfront districts, which have also the same kind of standard for maximum building setback.
So it's implying maybe outside of our own references somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, they're all over the place, so we're gonna find anything between nothing and probably what we're coming up with, is what I'm saying.
I think where I recall hearing that originally from, was the Winter Cities conference. That was one way to stop the next thing. I mean, pedestrians downtown at least.
Right. So on the next page, we wanting to change the gasoline service stations category to say fuel dispensing uses, including service stations. That would be able to include any kind of private or public entity that has their own pump, fuel pumps. Because we wanted to add down here in the stormwater management sections, the recommendation from our engineering department to require some kind of a open air retention basin for those type of adjacent to fuel pumps in case there's fuel spills, which there are fairly commonly with fuel dispensing businesses. Pump overflows, whenever there's a leak. So something that will be able to hold the fuel until it's evaporates out.
I do see a couple problems with what's proposed there though. If that tension area is not lined, we're actually concentrating all of the fuel to infiltrate the ground at a certain point. Whereas if it were left on a paved surface, it would evaporate much quicker. And if you do provide infiltration on a site with underground storage tanks, they have to have alarms underground on their storage tanks to detect leaks. If we start pushing fuel down with stormwater, we're going to set off those alarms. It's going to be impossible to determine whether the storage tank is leaking or not impossible because they can take measurements on tanks and determine whether they're holding at a constant level, but it still complicates things. And then the provision of having an overflow directed to the sewer system. Fuel is going to float on the water, and the overflows take fuel off the top. So it's going to channel fuel into the storm sewer system anyway, should the overflow actually start to function. So there are alternatives to this that the city has actually installed a couple of stormwater treatment devices, separators on a few of the overflows that go in, or the outlets that go into Lake Superior that do have an absorbent material to collect fuel residue. It might make more sense to try to require something more of that nature.
That was the original proposal. Jim Compton designed those, and we just learned that it's not something that's commonly used in a fuel, especially like with a gas station situation.
Okay. But I do think that if we're going to require a retention area, it should be lined to prevent infiltration, for one thing. Typically, hopefully they could get a hazardous materials team to respond and recover the material before it reaches some kind of overflow status. Take it out of there, dispose of it elsewhere, rather than allowing it to get into the storm sewer system to begin with.
Right.
And it is, I mean, we've dealt with a number of fuel system spills into the storm sewer system here. And, you can recover most of it from the storm sewer system too before it reaches the natural waterway, but you don't typically get all cold, so there's some residue. And that out of the street pavement when it rains too, so.
I think Compton came up with this because he encountered a fuel station that I think he said it was 2,000 gallons of fuel spill before they got under control. No, I mean just on the ground. There's no way to separate it or retain it or anything.
into all for slow storage or,
Right.
you know, or rainfall at the top of that. And there are fuel, or fuel water separators that are required inside most service stations where actual car repairs are done.
Yeah.
Right, and those use a different type of separator than what is called for in this, like, where just having overflow, they actually pull water out the bottom.
Yeah.
So I think that,
He said those kind of places are usually well equipped to deal with spills when they happen. Whereas fuel gas stations, they can go for a while before somebody responds to it. Spill a lot of fuel, like the case he was citing, 2,000 gallons of fuel spill before he got to.
I think, you know, that is somewhat his area of expertise, to protect the stormwater system. I think we could ask him to take another look at it.
Yeah, yeah.
If he wants
Right, and he can come to the meeting. So I'll talk to him about that, we'll get back.
My concern is that if it's a basin that's out there, then it becomes an attractive nuisance if it's filled with gasoline until it evaporates. You don't want that for the property owners to deal with, because it'd have to be covered some way, or that the liability would be.
Well, I think if there's a spill, they have to report it to legal and
Okay.
to others. Anyway, just when it's first noticed. You're saying that could be, you know, when they show up for work the next morning or something, so that it could have been legal.
Not so that it sits there for days or
No.
whatever, and becomes an attractive nuisance to kids.
Whether it's
and everybody
first
else.
responders or whether it's a hazardous material team that's, you know, that's in that business to recover it. I don't think they'd leave it there to evaporate unless it was just a film. If there's any recoverable material, it would be pumped up into other containers and taken off-site for disposal.
And I think Jim's point on having a basin that would let it soak into the ground is it'd be better to have it concentrated in one area where you recover the soil, get rid of it, than have it sit somewhere where it could cool up potentially and become a hazard of flammable.
Just that we look at all those, that he looks, whoever you're gonna talk to, that he looks at that.
Dave is referring to the city's hydrology engineer.
So we're almost done. Next section, we've got the additional information where these things that different people wanted us to add to the site plan review list requirements and a lot of, so, you know, there's several things that I've thought of. These are more or less like voluntary things that we could put in the list for a developer to consider and ask if they want to comment on it or put something in there. Like the public art elements, our Arts and Culture Center director has been trying to figure out a way to get public art into the site plan review requirement list for a long time, where it hasn't been added for development, but it's something that we could start with as a voluntary thing. If you want to, you know, comment on it, put some narrative in there. If you want to include anything like that, along with any kind of electric vehicle charging, infrastructure. Doesn't have to be a charger. I mean, that's one of the things we prefer people think about when they're developing property. If they're gonna upgrade the electrical for the future, if they're thinking, well, you know, maybe we'll have these in 5 years, well, maybe now's the time to think about your wiring, your service panel size, and maybe stubbing the conduit out for it, anything of that nature. The incorporation of green infrastructure elements like rain gardens, impervious pavers, green roof, trench drains, that kind of thing. We want to encourage people to do that, but it's, we don't have a way to require any of that stuff, but it's a lot better than putting the water into the storm system if you can retain it on site and put it back into something, especially something living. And then affordable housing, if somebody wanted to propose this is an affordable housing thing, you want to know how they are proposing it's affordable. We don't have any incentives or anything like that built into the code now for affordable housing. I don't know what we really have to offer in that way in the zoning. I don't know the city code, but, and then building on the requirement that we've approved for Third Street to have colorful cladding materials, just putting that in there as an option to let people know. The city would prefer to have materials that aren't black, gray, or white used on the cladding.
Comments?
The only thing I might add is that the green infrastructure is renewable energy encouragement of.
Oh,
I have a problem with us telling people what colors to make your buildings.
yeah.
Especially since even after they build it one way, it gets painted black anyway, whether it's sharp furniture or elegant piece of supply or whatever.
Isn't that new gym is black too?
It's gonna be
I can't remember the name of
it
it.
was some furniture, not some.
Yeah.
So you don't think having a thing in there saying, this would be preferred to have colorful trim materials or cladding?
Well, if you make it clear that developers are encouraged to use color or something of that nature, but to try to regulate it or keep it at 50% or whatever. I remember when the architects for the hospital were here, they were, I guess, selling the hospital on the fact that it was going to be white to match the birch trees of the area and gray for the granite cliffs and all that. That was their selling point, that they were trying to match natural tones, and we've got other language in the code that tries to encourage the use of natural materials for building cladding. An awful lot of it is going to be gray.
Unfortunately.
But gray is not necessarily a bad color. I don't think Silbury was all that bad. I prefer tans, pine ridge, but everybody has their own color preferences, and I don't think we should be forcing them to, especially in a community that's trying to push the arts and freedom of expression for each individual to put beauty as they see it. Start telling them you can't use certain colors to us. Just my personal.
I think it's wonderful that it's in there. It's just a suggestion that can even be accepted where it will. I think it's a good thing to have in there.
As a suggestion.
Yeah.
Commissioner Freeman.
Got a question, I thought. We were preached that as a site plan review.
There's a lot of things in our plans that say support this, encourage that, promote this. How do you do that? How are we supposed to do that? This is one of those ways we can do it. How do we promote public art elements as part of development? What are our other options?
But incentives and other programs, you don't need to make it part of a regulated code. It's just,
And this is where it comes in as voluntary information or considerations for your, while you're developing your site plans. Seems like the perfect place to do it, and then we're getting criticized from other departments because we don't have any kind of way to encourage people to do things. We're constantly, well, why don't you provide an incentive for that? What incentives are we gonna give people? We can't give money away to people. We can't just say, okay, you know, Sarah wants us to make anything that has to do with growing food in your yard free. If you're gonna have chickens, okay, we shouldn't charge any permits for chickens. Somebody else wants us to have no fees if it's solar energy. Somebody else wants there to be no fees if there's public art. Pretty soon, there's no fees if you keep doing that. And we're supposed to operate as a business. We're supposed to
there
operate.
are other incentives other than monetary. I mean, the city did have award programs in the past for beautification or you know, certain types of development. It wasn't that you got anything meaningful other than a certificate and a little bit of good press in the media, but there were programs that actually promoted tax saving for businesses and things like that.
Well, how about we just keep this in here until we get everybody focused on it? I can see one no, one yes.
I said it's just worded as a suggestion.
This is just a suggestion.
So you thinking
You can change the wording.
preferred or encouraged in front of colorful?
Encouraged, so it's like, all right, I can tell you how much opposition I got when I changed the city fleet color to emergency light yellow. And I see after I left, to change it back to the blue.
When you say encourage, people look at that and they say, well, if I want to get my plan through the planning commission, I better be able to bright yellow or whatever color they want. Therefore, they will vote yes. If I don't, they might vote no.
Well, most of the time, we don't see any exterior color. And if they provide us a pattern book, or rarely they provide us some kind of color renderings, but often it's just the elevations. We don't know what they're gonna do. And if we just say, this is preferred, it goes back to that thing of, 6 months of winter is gray and white, and white and gray, and gray. And people get so impressed by that, they kill themselves. I mean, it's, in Norway, they discovered that when you build colorful, people are a little less, likely to kill themselves every year.
Come on, guys.
If you want to put a duplex in the middle of a low density residential neighborhood, you don't want to make it right big.
So the next section is our new and very much improved drawing for parking dimensions.
We took your suggestions from the last meeting, talked to the engineering department, and they drew this up. So it has an example of the reverse angle parking. It fixed the zero parallel parking diagram. Because it had those X's. And this is actually how the engineering design would design these different things.
And make it.
I'm really glad you did it, thank you.
Your understanding.
And Michael will move on then? Yeah, no?
Yes.
One question. How can you have two two-way traffic, parallel parking. Or not parallel parking, but with angle parking. Backing out, you're going out one end, always just back out, swing around and go out the other end.
So the diagram is both showing a 30-degree to 53-degree, and then it's also saying an example of you can have the reverse angle parking, or, you know, this is the one way. It's not saying it's two way.
It's in parentheses there, we're saying the parking applies to the right here.
Yeah. What's it,
For driving parking. So maybe it's not good for you. It's much clearer than it was.
I wonder if we should put it one way or.
Okay, I'll talk to the engineer. All right, so, removing the small wind and the solar energy, but we do not have solar energy tonight because that section is going to take some work, and then I have to talk to Dave about what I've kind of done with it. And I wasn't able to get it done in time for the meeting tonight. But so to show you an example, we're moving the small wind energy section from section Article 7, and we're moving it into Article 6.
So we'll go back to this next time. We have all that stuff in the same part. With small wind energy systems, this is basically in here.
No language has changed, we're just moving sections.
This is specific use standards.
And then the next one, Dave has spoken about the update to manufacturing.
Yeah, this is just, trying to help Wayne feel better about us easing up on government restrictions and making light manufacturing permitted in more zoning districts. Now, seriously, we want to suggest create permitted uses for light manufacturing instead of special in the regional commercial, general commercial, and central business districts. Most of those uses, like the breweries, that sort of as a special use. But, it seems like the uses we have down there that are light manufacturing have all integrated fine, that there hasn't been any nuisance issues. Think of commercial kitchens, co-ops, the Beth Miller jewelry brought up earlier. She got a light manufacturing special use permit. Breweries, and a number of other things.
The term workshop, did you have several pieces of paragraph there, that just referring to manufacturing spaces, the term you're using for manufacturing space?
Yeah, more or less.
So what exactly is municipal workshops?
Those shops where they're doing heavy work on from off the motor pool to carpenter shop, welding shop. County has those kind of facilities. Certainly the LP does.
Okay.
Just trying to play some common sense.
And this is the last one.
It's the last thing.
Oh, yeah.
Any further comments now?
So Dave added one last thing that wasn't in the.
Oh, yeah, right, the document that this is about all I've had time to work on, to add to this. It's the agenda went out last week, for holiday. And this came up, we had stuff because it comes out, good luck. Murals can be signs, right? They can have commercial content on them. And we found one in the city, we got a complaint from somebody that the mural on North Third Street contains commercial content, and it certainly does. So it's just that our definition right now doesn't acknowledge that it can be signs. We've always treated that they can be a wall sign. That's not, it's just that the definition of mural does not state that specifically. And then the way we regulate this, we're just, with this language here that we're proposing to add, it would just clarify that we're going to regulate the mural the same way we would regulate a wall sign, which is not by making the whole sign illegal if part of it has commercial content in it that's not permitted, but that we would permit a portion of it that contains commercial content. So if there's just this little bit of it that has either an image or graph or lettering or name of business, name of product that's being sold in the business, which is not supposed to be in. Up to this point, we've told people if you're going to have a mural, then either avoid that altogether or we're going to regulate a portion of it. But we didn't have it in the code. Now we want to just put that in the code so that it's out there, everybody sees it's being regulated the same way the wall sign would be. We don't necessarily say your whole sign is part of that. I mean, and in this next section of the code, we show you how we do that. For anybody that wants to really know how we regulate signs, you know, there's this area of the signs that have lettering and images. And so what we call a sign isn't necessarily the whole thing within the frame. It's oftentimes just part of the sign that has lettering or images in it. So just treating murals the same way as what we're getting at.
Issue that.
Where I'm sitting, I'm sure Margaret would get all read it from there, but I can't. I don't have in mind. Just read the change.
Yeah, so adding to this, right now it says mural, existing definitions, original painting or texturing applied to the surface of the wall or window. If the mural detects on-premise commercial content or off-premise commercial content, the mural.
Edicts.
Yeah, I know, I'm just, something's missing. Because it says if the mural depicts on-premise commercial content or off-premise commercial content.
Then that portion of the mural containing commercial
I'm
content.
trying to say what the existing definition is, and it's not all there. We're missing something from the existing definition. So what we're adding here is that the portion of the mural containing the commercial content will be considered a sign for purposes of the ordinance and will be regulated as such by this subsection of the code that regulates how we determine which part of the mural is a sign. So we don't want to make their whole law illegal and say you need a permit for that or you have to paint over it. So just that part of it that you shouldn't have put commercial content on a permit has to be changed.
Basically, the definition was before, I was trying to say, it says the mural, then would, that part of the mural would be considered a sign.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
So that's what I was trying to say. And then that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll open it up to commission comments.
Commissioner will refer Chair.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Be welcome,
Good job.
Chair. Thanks. Staff comment?
Just said the next meeting, April 16th, we will be having one.
Hasn't been canceled yet.
Correct.
Subject to
And that should be,
Well, yeah, plan development for work session.
that should be the last work session we have on the LBC material, for considering new material. We're looking at trying to get everything prepared for, a hearing on March 7th, or
May
7th. Or
21st.
21st, yeah.
Okay, declare the meeting adjourned at 7:46.